90 days ago, I made a decision that most people told me was either brave or stupid. I chose to live on $1,500 a month, on purpose, not because I had to, because I needed to know, really know, what was possible on an income that most people dismiss as not enough to do anything meaningful with. Everything that happened to my money for 90 days is in this notebook. And what I found was not what I expected. $1,500 per month is the approximate take-home pay of someone working full-time at just above minimum wage in most American states. It is the reality for millions of part-time workers, early career workers, single parents navigating childcare costs, and people rebuilding after a financial setback. I am not pretending to be poor. I am not manufacturing struggle for content. I am answering a question I have been asked repeatedly by real people in real situations. What would you actually do with my income? So I did it for real. 90 days, $1,500 per month, every cent tracked. The rules were simple. No using savings to supplement the experiment. No skipping genuine expenses that a real person at this income would face. Every dollar tracked in this notebook every single day. And no dramatic deprivation. The goal was to live normally, not to suffer. Before the story begins, let me show you the brutal arithmetic. $1,500 per month is $375 per week. It is $53.57 per day. It is $17.85 per meal if you eat 3 times a day and spend nothing else. My fixed costs in month 1, rent, $650. Utilities, $90, phone, $45, transport, $80 for a monthly transit pass. Total fixed costs, $865. That left me $635 for everything else. Food, clothing, personal care, entertainment, any unexpected cost, any savings, any giving. $635 for 30 days. $21.16 per day for everything that was not a fixed bill. I wrote that number on a piece of paper and put it on my refrigerator. $21.16 every single day for everything. This is where most people say it is impossible. This is also where the experiment gets interesting. Month 1 was about discovering how many unconscious spending habits I had built up over years of not having to think carefully about every dollar. In the first week alone, I overspent on food by $47. Not on luxury food, on habits. The coffee I bought without thinking. The prepared lunch because I had not planned. The snack purchased because it was there and I had never questioned it. At the end of week 1, I sat down and calculated my food spending. Before the experiment, I had been spending an average of $340 per month on groceries and food. I needed to get to $180. The gap felt enormous. Until I started meal planning for the first time in my adult life. Week 3 brought the first real crisis. My phone screen cracked. Repair cost, $85. My entire remaining flexible budget for the month was $44. I could not cover both. I made a choice. I lived with the cracked screen. I patched it with tape. I did not spend the $85. And something shifted in me when I made that decision. Not resentment, not suffering. Something closer to clarity. The recognition that I could tolerate inconvenience without it being an emergency. That not every problem required an immediate financial solution. The month 1 lesson was this. Most financial stress at low income is not caused by extravagance. It is caused by the complete absence of a buffer to absorb even small unexpected costs. I ended month 1 having spent $1,487. $13 remaining. Not a disaster, not a triumph, a starting point. Month 2 was about building the system that makes $1,500 not just survivable, but productive. I physically divided my $635 flexible budget into weekly cash envelopes. $150 per week for 4 weeks. $35 held as a micro-emergency buffer. I stopped using my card for anything in the flexible budget category. physical cash only. What I discovered immediately, when you hand over physical cash, you feel every transaction. The friction changes your behavior in ways that digital payment never does. I reduced my flexible spending by $94 in the first 2 weeks of month 2 compared to month 1. Not through suffering, through awareness. The meal planning transformation happened in month 2. I spent 90 minutes every Sunday planning every meal for the week. I bought exactly what I needed. I wasted almost nothing. My weekly food costs dropped from $85 to $47 without feeling deprived. Then there was the social cost. And this was the hardest part. My friends wanted to meet. A birthday celebration at a restaurant where the bill would be $60 minimum per person. I went to one. I declined the others. I hosted a simple dinner at home for 2 friends instead. And I discovered something that genuinely surprised me. The connection I had valued in social spending was never really about the spending. It was about the people. 2 friends, a home-cooked meal, a real conversation around my own kitchen table. It was better than every expensive restaurant night I could remember. Not cheaper. Better. By the end of week 6, I had a $40 surplus. I had never had a surplus in this experiment. I put it in a small jar labeled buffer. It was the first time money had moved forward instead of being completely consumed. I ended month 2 having spent $1,391. $109 remaining, $60 went into the buffer jar. $49 went on a dinner out I chose deliberately, without guilt, without a card, with cash counted out in advance. That dinner tasted different from every dinner I had ever bought on autopilot. Month 3 is where the experiment stopped being about money and started being about something deeper. I entered month 3 with $60 in my buffer jar. By the end of the month, it would have $160. Not a lot by any objective measure, but its psychological impact was enormous. For the first time since the experiment began, an unexpected cost did not feel catastrophic. It felt manageable. The buffer had not grown much in absolute terms, but it had completely changed how I moved through the world. I started tracking not just what I spent, but what I learned. I learned to cook 7 new recipes. I negotiated my phone bill down by $12 per month. I discovered I genuinely enjoyed 3 of my streaming services and was completely indifferent to 2 of them. I canceled the 2. And then, about 6 weeks into the experiment, somewhere in the middle of month 2, running into month 3, I started asking a question I could not stop asking. If I can live on $1,500 and still save something, what exactly have I been doing with the money I had above that amount? The answer was uncomfortable. I had been spending the difference unconsciously, not on things I genuinely valued, on habits I had never once interrogated. The restaurant I chose by default because it was easy, the subscription I forgot I had. The small purchase that felt like nothing individually but amounted to hundreds of dollars per month. I wrote in my notebook, the experiment was supposed to show me what you can do with $1,500. What it actually showed me is what I was doing with everything above $1,500. And the answer is mostly nothing intentional. By the end of month 3, I had $160 in my buffer, $40 in a small investment account I had opened with the month 2 surplus, and $87 remaining from month 3's budget. Total saved across 90 days, $287. On a $1,500 monthly income. A savings rate of approximately 6.4%, not transformational, but real, and built from nothing except intention. I am closing the notebook now. I am not going to claim the experiment was easy. It was not. I am not going to claim that $1,500 per month is comfortable or that anyone should aspire to living on it. What I am going to claim is this: 5 things these 90 days taught me that no financial book or video had managed to teach before. 1. The most expensive financial habit most people have is not a large purchase. It is the complete absence of a system for small spending. I was hemorrhaging money in amounts so small I had never bothered to notice them, until I had no choice but to notice every single one. 2. Physical cash changes behavior more effectively than any budgeting app ever built. The friction of handing over real money is not a bug in the system. It is the feature. Every fintech company in the world is trying to remove that friction. They are removing the mechanism that protects you. 3. Social spending is peer pressure with a receipt attached. The connection you value in social experiences can almost always be maintained at a fraction of the cost. What you are paying for at the expensive restaurant is not the connection. The connection is free. You are paying for the setting, and the setting is largely for appearance. 4. A buffer of any size changes your psychological relationship with money more than a pay rise does. My $60 buffer jar changed how I felt about money more dramatically than the months before the experiment when I earned substantially more. Because the buffer changed my relationship with unexpected costs. An income increase without a buffer just gets spent. A buffer, however small, produces financial calm that income alone never could. 5. The question worth asking first is not, how do I make more money? It is, what am I actually doing with the money I have? Because if the answer to the second question is unclear, the answer to the first will never be enough. I learned this not by reading it, by living it for 90 days on $1,500 a month. I am opening the notebook one more time. The final page, one number at the top, $287, and below it, in my own handwriting, the sentence I wrote on the last night of the experiment. I did not prove that $1,500 is enough. I proved that $1,500 used with intention is more than most people do with twice that amount. The notebook is closed. But the question it opened, what are you actually doing with the money you have? That one stays with you, and I think it should.